What does a beautiful life look like? In a world always wanting more, it's easy to believe that God's blessing looks like success, fame, health, and comfort. It's easy to confuse the American dream with a life that God blesses. Yet when we read the Sermon on the Mount, we see that a beautiful life looks very different from a life of ease.
Well, good morning. It's a wonderful thing to jump into all the time that was spent here last week. Mourning really is a vital part of participating in this beautiful life. And if we don't have that, if we don't engage in that, then we kind of miss out on the whole point of this in the first place. Mourning is more than just being upset. And in fact, as we look at all the different things throughout Jesus' list in the Beatitudes, we find none of those things in and of themselves have much value. It's engaging in the life with God that brings value. So I look at this list and remember who Jesus is talking to as he is saying these things. Jesus is giving his disciples this picture of the character of the kingdom, and he brings them all up to the top of this mountain. Now, up to this point, Jesus has been out there doing different things, and he's been gathering disciples, and he's been gaining fame along the way. But his disciples still have kind of mixed thoughts about who this person is. They have mixed thoughts about what his purpose is and what's going to happen to them if they just decide to keep following after him. Jesus is giving his disciples this picture of the character of the kingdom through this list of blessings. And one thing that we notice immediately is that this isn't the sort of list that just anyone would write. I get teased by Stephanie sometimes for my affection for this wonderful program called Family Feud. Are there any Family Feuders out there? Oh my goodness. I would kill on that show, I just got to say. So whenever Grayson gets old enough, we're going to try out for that one. I can always think of all these different answers that no one is thinking about. It's so obvious to me, like, of course that one's going to be on the list. Of course it's this. Of course, why did you even ask that? That's a horrible answer. And as you look throughout this list, it seems like Jesus has been striking out in the first three. Who are the blessed people? It's certainly not the poor in spirit. Not a chance. Who are the poor? Who are the blessed? It's certainly not the people that mourn. If you went up to an ordinary person of the day and asked them, who are the people that are blessed, you would get a different list altogether. The blessed people weren't difficult to point out. The blessed had some proof of being blessed by God. It was really easy to see the people who were blessed and who weren't blessed. Everyone knew. It was as easy as looking at the success that was in their life already. Blessings were something that had already happened to this person. So if they were blessed by God, then they were the successful people in their jobs. They had big, large families. They were wealthy. Their children were healthy. They're getting into all the good schools. They held positions of leadership in the temple, leadership in their communities. Everyone knew the blessed people around them. And so whenever Jesus brings up this idea that the person who is wearing that $5,000 suit and the girl who just lost her parents to a drunk driver are in the same group of people, he's speaking nonsense. He's already struck out in the first three. Jesus' list brings up people that no one in his day would call blessed. And as we come to this third blessing that Jesus talks about, that includes the humble. The humble, across the board, were not considered to be blessed. Humility in and of itself was not a quality that people would encourage. You didn't encourage your children to be humble whenever they grew up. Now, that's not to say that they didn't encourage them to be polite, but humility meant something very, very different. If this sounds weird, like why in the world would someone not want someone to be humble? It's because we have changed our definition of humility in the time between Jesus and now. Today, when we talk about someone who's humble, it's someone who doesn't think of themselves as the most important person in the room. Someone who never takes credit for all the work they do. They're down to earth. They're not arrogant. They don't think they're better than you. I mean, honestly, is there a worse quality in someone that makes them more unlikable than someone that always knows what they're talking about? Someone that always promotes themselves, someone who is always the best at whatever they do, and they need for you to know how important they are. The thing is, that wasn't the quality of humility in the day that Jesus is speaking to. Jesus' world had a very different understanding. To Jesus' world, humility meant humiliation. It meant lowering yourself and throwing away your status and inviting people to think less of you. I mean, you were shooting your reputation in the foot if you were going to be humble in some way. There was nothing noble or valuable about being humble. It was shameful. And it was the quickest way to lose your social standing, which meant everything in the day that Jesus was speaking to. I mean, if you're royalty, you don't act like a commoner. And if you're a commoner, you don't act like a slave. You stay where you are. You are fighting and scraping to stay exactly where you are and maybe grow up a little bit more. Ascend to a higher social standing where you have opportunities that extend beyond what you have right now. If you're a commoner, you don't act like a slave. Everyone knew this. I mean, good things don't come from being humble. The interesting thing is that Jesus acknowledges that. He sees that, according to this world, that is true. And if you are committed to living in this world, then you need to ignore what Jesus says next. Being humble doesn't produce good things in your life if you stay in the world that you're in right now. If you stay with the same kind of loyalties, same kind of values that you're a part of right now, if you want to stay in the same system that you're in right now, don't be humble. You need to scrape by, you need to fight, you need to promote yourself. Go ahead, be a little bit braggadocious, be a little bit arrogant in the different things that you do, because that's what operating in this world requires of you. But Jesus is saying something else. He says, I know that's how humility works in your kingdom. But in my kingdom, humility works very, very differently. You know, humility. Do you guys remember middle school very much? Do you remember like the pressure in the morning of waking up and trying to find the right clothes? Find the right clothes, even if they're dirty a little bit, Febreze them a little bit, you'll be okay. Because the right clothes get you into this group. If you're listening to the right kinds of music, if you're doing all these different right things, then you're a part of this good group. And if you don't, if you act like someone who's not a part of that group, you fall away. Humility meant the possibility of being ostracized, being pushed out of that group, losing your place at the table. Jesus says, in my kingdom, humility works very, very differently. In fact, the humble lack nothing. And when we look at how humility works in the community of the kingdom, it doesn't threaten to keep you out of the group. In fact, it's the only way in. Our passage, it's really short today. It's blessed are the humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. And if you notice in there's nothing else left. What's left for the prideful? What's left for the folks who decide to be a part of some kind of kingdom that's other than what God has in store for us? There's nothing else up there. If you went to like a reading of someone's will and you sat there along with the humble person gets everything. The prideful people walk away disappointed, not even having what they've been scraping by to grab. They don't have this one portion of the whole that they've been scraping to maintain and hold on to. All their effort, it results in nothing. Everything is given to the humble. The humble lack nothing. The humble aren't pushed out of the group. It's the only way in. And what makes the Beatitudes so important for us is that these statements are more than just a list of rewards for people along the way. They're more than just promises to this destitute people that are going through such a hard time right now. It's good news for us to hear that Jesus comes and is speaking to folks that are experiencing the worst of the worst in their life. That in the society that they were in right then, no one else was caring for them. No one else concerned themselves with whether they would eat or not. No one was really concerned about all these different things that were happening. They were focused on themselves. And so it's good news to hear that Jesus would come and speak about this kingdom that would bring blessing to all these folks on the margins. That's a part of it. But beyond that, the Beatitudes show us what sort of people will receive those blessings. We have a picture of who the kingdom has come for, but also how to be a part of the kingdom. So if you are one of those people on the margins, if you are someone who just lost a friend to cancer, if you are someone who's poor in spirit, if you are someone who is humble, who doesn't have the status of the person next to them, Jesus came for you. There's good news in this kingdom. But beyond that, if you're not in that situation and you find yourself, well, I just want to be a part of that blessing that God's talking about. I just want to receive from God all these good things that He is giving out to these poor people. I just want to participate in whatever God is doing in this world around me. That Jesus guy, he's been walking around for a while now. He's been doing some crazy stuff. And these 12 guys decided to follow after him and said, I don't know what's going on, but I want some of this. I want to be a part of this mission along the way. And this is the prescription. This is the job description. The Beatitudes are the job description for participating in the mission of God in the world. When we understand it like this, there's some challenging things that are being said here. There's a story out of 2 Kings I'd like to read to you. You can read along with me on the screen. It begins talking about the king of Aram had great admiration for Naaman, the commander of his army, because through him the Lord had given Aram great victories. But though Naaman was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. And at this time, the Aramean raiders had invaded the land of Israel. And among their captives was a young girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. And one day the girl said to her mistress, I wish my master would go to see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy. So Naaman told the king what the young girl from Israel had said. Go and visit the prophet. The king of Aram told him, I will send a letter of introduction for you to take to the king of Israel. So Naaman started out carrying as gifts 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter to the king of Israel said, with this letter I present my servant Naaman, and I want you to heal him of his leprosy. When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in dismay and said, Am I God that I can give life and take it away? Why is this man asking me to heal someone with leprosy? I can see that he's just trying to pick a fight with me. But when Elisha, the man of God, the prophet, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes in dismay, he sent this message to him, Why are you so upset? Send Naaman to me, and he will learn that there is a true prophet here in Israel. And so Naaman went with his horses and chariots and waited at the door of Elisha's house. But Elisha sent a messenger out to him with this message, Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. Then your skin will be restored and you will be healed of your leprosy. But Naaman became angry and stalked away. I thought he would certainly come out to meet me, he said. I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy and call on the name of the Lord and heal me. Aren't the rivers of Damascus, the Abana and Pharpar, better than any of the rivers in Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed? So Naaman turned away and went away in rage. But his officers tried to reason with him and said, Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it? So you should certainly obey him when he says simply, Go and wash and be cured. So Naaman went down to the Jordan River and dipped himself 7 times as the man of God had instructed him. And his skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child, and he was healed. There's a lot of moving pieces in this story, and we can't hit all of them today, and you wouldn't want to be here that long. But something about this story gives us a picture of what humility looks like, both as it's played out in the lives of those who participate in the mission of God and those who benefit from the mission of God. Let's start with Naaman. Naaman is already understood by the wider world of his time as someone who is great. And he's well regarded, he has honor, he has respect, but he has this issue that he cannot take care of. His honor can't do anything for him here. Being someone of high social standing has nothing to do with whether or not he can be cured of leprosy or not. So as he is struggling with this, where does help come in first? Where does help come into the story? Where does the hope of restoration for him come from? It's not the warriors around him. It's certainly not the kings who are freaking out about letters that show up at their door. This little girl. This little Israelite girl who was captured along the way. I mean, her home was destroyed. Her parents most likely slaughtered along the way. This little girl doesn't have a story. We don't know her name. I've got a feeling that she's one who mourned. And yet somehow along the way, she is the one that gets tasked with just saying, if you just went to the prophet of God that's in Israel, God will take care of you. God takes on her life. This warrior who's been out there very successfully raiding and ruling and conquering follows the hand of a little girl. I just imagine this big looming 7-foot-tall guy reaching down and being led by the finger. The mission of God begins through this little girl's life and leads him to this place in Israel. Now, at Elisha's house, Elisha is sitting there, and it's a scandalous scene to think about how Naaman hasn't figured out yet that humility is something that he has to be a part of, that he has to engage in to be healed. All along the way, he is preparing himself to stay prideful, to stay in charge of everything, to stay responsible for this, because what he's going to do, what else did he bring with him? He brought gold and silver and clothing. He brought all these different things to pay this prophet to heal him. He was going to earn it along the way. And in fact, that's the reason why he starts to turn away whenever Elisha, first off, won't even go out there to acknowledge how special this guy is. This guy was ticked off. And think about it. You're a really big deal. And this guy who you have come to pay to do something for you won't even walk out of his house. Elisha's just sitting there, just this old man in his house, and just tell him to go do this. And Elisha gets back to his crossword puzzle or whatever he's doing. Elisha goes ahead and humbles him, whether he wants it or not. And that's what causes him to turn away. If I could just take responsibility for all these different things that I'm doing, if I could just pay for this, what does the officer say? If he had given you a difficult task, wouldn't you have done it? The interesting thing with Elisha and Naaman in this story is that sometimes I wonder if we really want to receive gifts from God. Blessings don't come to the humble in the world that we see that Jesus is talking to. But in this kingdom, blessings come to the humble. And blessings are free gifts. Being a part of this kingdom, being a part of one who receives these gifts, means that you don't pay for them. You're not responsible along the way, and you have to give that up. And even as Naaman is starting to leave, humility takes the place of this officer's life. In a different translation, it says this old servant man is the one that runs out to grab him and speak to him. So just like the little girl, this old servant is now being the one who is offering advice, who is leading this mighty, prideful, honorable warrior to experience healing. And finally, it's because Naaman was willing to let go of all those things that he received healing. Naaman very well could have walked away right then and said, I'm not going to have any part of this. I guess this is just how my skin looks now. But he lets go. And that becomes his introduction into the kingdom of God. Something new happens in his life. He's restored along the way, restored back to the skin of a young boy. All of this. He's not set up to participate in this military kingdom anymore. Think about the warriors that you know. Think about those who have gone overseas and fought before. Have you ever taken a second to look at the hands of them whenever they come back? My cousins are all in the National Guard and have all served overseas. And whenever they come back, there's something different about their hands. There's callousness. They've seen things. They've done things. Naaman isn't set up to participate in that kind of life anymore. His hands aren't coarse and unfeeling anymore. His hands are like the hands of a young boy. Sensitivity is brought back. This is a whole life kind of transformation that happens as he engages with God's world through humility. The Beatitudes are the job description for us. If you are living that life already, this is good news. If you aren't, there's no other way to participate in this world that Christ has brought near to us than through this list of blessings. There's not another list of blessings out there. And humility demands more of us than just being polite to our neighbor. The interesting thing about humility as we see it around us most often is that, think of someone that is humble that you know. Someone that's well respected. Maybe a name or a face was coming to your mind earlier whenever I was reading that list of qualities. People who don't think of themselves as most important. People who don't fight for attention. People who aren't concerned about getting all the credit. Now, that's a very different thing than someone who intentionally lowers themselves. My father-in-law is one of the most humble people that I know. But up until his retirement, he still had a job. He's one of the smartest people that I know. But at the same time, he didn't throw that away. He didn't leave his job to go pick up trash on the side of the road. He wasn't threatened along the way that he was going to lose his position. And sometimes humility, all it is for us, is how we present ourselves, but has no impact on the life that we're actually living. I knew a girl, I got to work with her up in Kansas City, and she said that whenever she was in high school, she was already set to be valedictorian first day of her senior year. Her GPA up to that point, no one was even close. And this was a big deal for her. And please hear me right here. Education is good, stay in school. These are good things to be a part of. But she was so focused on scoring the right grades in the right classes. And her first semester, she had done exactly what she had done up to that point. She had signed up for every AP and honor class. She had done everything along the way that was going to set her up to have an even higher GPA. I always mix it up, the weighted or unweighted one that can go above 4.0. So she was already at 4.0, but she was jumping up to 4.45, 4.5. And as she was looking at her schedule for the spring semester, she had been a leader in her youth group, and her youth pastor had been talking to her about taking on more responsibilities, and she really felt like there's something about what he's talking about right now that really does apply to me, that I really do need to be a part of the mission of God, and the way that God is leading me right now wants more from me. Where are you going to find the time for that? I keep thinking that at some point in my life, I'm going to pass some barrier where I'm not busy anymore, and I haven't found it yet. No, it's okay. Once you graduate high school and you're in college, no, never mind. Once you graduate college and you're married and you're in grad school, no. Once you have a baby, no. She began looking at her life and seeing the reality of things, that she was filling up her life with good things. Education is good. But the time has to come from somewhere if she's going to serve God in the way that God was calling her to. So one of the smartest people that I know, and a far better youth pastor than me, she said, I looked at my schedule and I knew that I couldn't handle all the courses along the way and still meet this goal that God was calling me to. Went into her counselor's office and said, I would like to sign up for English 4. Like all the like rough kid classes, like they don't have special names along the way. It's just a subject and a number. I'll take English 4, I'll take math 4, I'll take science 4, and she finished out her entire schedule, and she was in there with the folks who, many of them were going to be returning the next year because they hadn't done very well. She took on these classes that weren't impressive to anyone, didn't challenge her, put her in a different social group. You understand that? I got to be a part of a handful of different classes in high school that put me in the honors group along the way. I know, it's pretty cool, right? There's a group that you travel with the entire way through. She left that group. She put away her hopes of being valedictorian along the way. And that was the way that she was able to engage in the mission that God was calling her to. Humility, as Jesus is talking about it, this kind of humility, it demands something from us. It demands more than just an appearance of humility. It demands some impact on our life where we are now lowered because of this. C.S. Lewis talks about this phenomenon that happens sometimes where people will read Scripture and look at Jesus' life and his words and say, man, I'm not a believer, I'm an atheist, but that makes a whole lot of sense. He's a good teacher. He's saying some good things. And C.S. Lewis says this, and I agree with this. No, Jesus cannot just be a good teacher. He is either a madman or he is the Son of God who has brought the kingdom of God near. You don't follow Jesus' instruction to be humble if you're not willing to be a part of this kingdom as well. These instructions along the way, this idea that we would humble ourselves, that we would follow in Jesus' example as well. If Jesus isn't the Son of God, if this kingdom is not coming, if this future where the blessings are going to be poured out in our lives isn't happening, this is nonsense, and Jesus is a madman. But if these things are true, then there's a kingdom where the humble are lifted up, where the folks who have opted out of the whole game receive everything in the end. It's ironic, isn't it, that the folks who have stopped concerning themselves with gaining anything else are the ones who receive it. They receive the gift that they weren't even looking for anymore. And I've given up on this. Because being on mission with Jesus means so much more. God's calling me to something bigger than this. Man, what if this kingdom would transform the whole world as I know it? as Jesus was saying all these different things, his disciples still hadn't figured things out. In fact, if you follow along or know the story very well, throughout all the Gospels, his disciples are some of the most inconsistent people that you've ever seen trying to follow after Jesus, which is actually pretty good news for us, I think. If you want to call yourself a disciple, then whenever you slip up or whenever you don't understand things or whenever you don't quite get what Jesus is after, you're in good company with these guys. In the verses, just moments prior to Jesus' arrest and betrayal, his mock trial and his beating and his execution, his disciples are sitting in a room together, having just received the Lord's Supper, which we're about to partake. And they're arguing about greatness. And they're arguing about, hey, who's going to be the greatest person in this kingdom? And you can just imagine Jesus' disappointment. You boneheads, have you not figured out that I'm not about that world? I'm not bringing you into this worldly success. Otherwise, I wouldn't tell you to be humble. The kingdom that I'm inviting you into is upside down completely. The prideful don't inherit anything. There's nothing left because it's all been given to the humble. You don't receive healing by paying for it. You don't change by your efforts alone. All these things come as blessings from God. At the table that night, Jesus reminded them and gave them a picture that is given to us as well of what it means to be a part of this community shaped by the Beatitudes. A people that participate in a different kind of kingdom that looks upside down, that looks like nonsense, that should be called out for craziness if God isn't saying things that are true. He invites them to participate in a different kind of life by taking his body and taking his blood. And sometimes the mystery of this moment and the meaning of this moment is lost on us. But if I could say it in just a couple words, when we take Jesus' body, we receive it. And whenever you receive something, whenever you eat something, the phrase, you are what you eat, you take this into yourself, and it's an acknowledgement that I want to be like Jesus. That Jesus' body, how Jesus' body was broken and bruised in the service of the Lord. God, I'm on board. That your body, I want that to be my body. And God, your blood, as it was poured out in the service to others, that brought healing to everyone. God, use my blood the same way. God, my whole being is here for you to use. So on the night that he was betrayed, he took the bread, and when he had broken it and blessed it, he said, "This is my body, which is broken for you. Take and eat." And in the same way, he took the cup, and when he had blessed it, he said, "Take and drink. This is the blood of the new covenant. And as often as you eat of this bread and drink of this cup, you proclaim my kingdom." This morning, I'd like to invite our helpers who are going to be working with us during communion, and just give a couple instructions as well. Whenever you come to receive, you can come to a station to my right or to my left, and there will be a station in the center as well. Our practices in this church and in our denomination are open. That means you don't have to be a member of this church. You don't have to be a Nazarene to partake in this moment with us. All you have to do is be someone who is seeking after an encounter with God in this moment. So this might be your first time. This might be the first time that you engage in something like this, where you want to meet with God right now and you've never done it before. This is a great time to do that. There's mystery here. We believe that God meets us whenever we come together in this sacrament. This is holy and set apart for God's purposes. So as the table is open, I invite you to come. The table has been prepared for you. And at this table, expect that God will be doing this work in you. That as someone who is humble right now, God is faithful to bring about blessings and promises to their fulfillment. And for someone who wants to be a part of this kingdom, God invites us to be humble as well. Come, the table is prepared for you.